Hi, I'm Dan.
And I'm James.
And welcome to the Cornwall Property Podcast, where every week we bring you the latest news, hot topics and guidance around the Cornwall property market.
Stay tuned to be informed, inspired and to have any of your property related questions answered by trusted local property professionals.
So, welcome back. Episode 11 of the Cornwall Property Podcast. This is me, I'm Dan. And
I'm James.
And we've got James here. It's a good start. So, for those of you watching on YouTube, and those of you who have maybe probably already noticed a slight difference in sound quality in certain areas, James unfortunately has come down with COVID. So, James is feeling good. You feel all right, James?
I do feel very good, and I count my lucky stars for that. But unfortunately, have tested positive. But I am in a positive state, so one of those things.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. So, obviously, we adapt. We crack on. We adapt. So James is here with us. He's on FaceTime. So if you are watching the video, if you see me looking down here at the FaceTime, it's just so I can see his beautiful face. And that's why there's a slight difference in quality and maybe a little bit of timing. But great to have you here, mate, and appreciate you making the effort, even though you're not feeling 100%. I know you say you feel good. I know you're not feeling 100%. So thank you. We all appreciate that. So let's crack on. Cornwall Property Podcast is here. So this is our market update, where we are going to give you a little update on terms of what's going on in the world of property. So those of you who aren't familiar with the Cornwall Property Podcast, where have you been? We are here our aim is essentially to inform, educate, inspire you guys to get involved with property, with a particular emphasis on the Cornwall property market. We are fully aware that there's a housing crisis down here in Cornwall. So the aim is that we want to help address that and bridge that gap between empty properties and people needing homes. So yeah, that's simply why we're here. So James, any feedback we've had so far?
Yeah, as always, we're always getting messages through our various channels where people can reach us, and we're very grateful for that, because without the feedback, we wouldn't be able to improve and, of course, answer your lovely questions. So just as a quick reminder, you can go to the cornwallpropertypodcast.com, log on there onto the website, and you can send us a message using the link. In addition to that, you can also go onto our Facebook page and our socials there, where you can also send in any exciting questions or anything property related that you might have for us. And thank you again for all those reach outs to us. We love it.
Fantastic. Yeah, 100%. Please do keep getting in touch. It helps us keep going with content, keep giving you some value. So I'm going to get started, James. And the first headline that caught my eye was actually a DPS. So the DPS are known as the Deposit Protection Service. So this is where your landlords or your estate agents would log your deposits, your tenancy deposits. So they can't keep the money in the bank. Essentially, they must log it with an external government-backed body. So one of those is the DPS, the Deposit Protection Service. Now, they've done, obviously, with that in mind, they get a lot of statistics and data with regards to rents across the country. So they've got some interesting facts regarding Q4 and the prices and the increases of rent prices throughout Q4 and throughout the last year, to be fair. So no surprises, I'm sure, but there have been big increases in the rent prices throughout the UK. So the average rent prices have increased for a fifth consecutive quarter. Now, this again, why? Simply because there's so much pressure and demand and requirements for rental properties. So the biggest areas where they've seen these growths are, interestingly, London, but the Southwest is another big one. And again, those of us down here, there's no real surprises there. They've referenced that a lot of the issue seems to be where landlords who have got rental properties have been taking their properties off the private rental sector and actually then started to holiday let them, short-term let them, or potentially sell them, because they've seen that there's growth in regards to the amount of rent. There's a big demand for staycations during COVID. So as a result, there's been less private rental properties on the market, which is obviously supply and demand increased then the demand locally, which has driven the prices up. So no real surprises there. But if I give you some statistics and some numbers for those of you that are always interested in that side of things. So the DPS have reported that rents across the UK as a whole have increased by 5.3% between Q3 of 2020 and Q3 of 2021 and Q4 of 2021. So a big jumps. And they say London, Southwest and Yorkshire are actually the largest value rises in the last quarter of last year. So the national averages, the Southwest has always generally lagged from the national average of rentals. I'm sure that's no surprise to everyone. So when you look at London, for example, rents are a lot higher, and down here in the Southwest, we are normally quite a little bit behind. But for the first time, we have now drawn level with the national average in prices for rental. So where's the issues with that? Obviously, the differences are where you've got high rentals such as that in, say, for example, the main cities in London, for example, they're on a higher salary, aren't they? They're getting far better income than generally your typical Cornish worker may do. So if now that our rents are being brought up as well in line with that London market, well, the salaries aren't quite as reflective of that now either. So this is where we could have some issues. And again, it all adds to this housing crisis, which obviously we need to address, and we're doing our best just to educate and inform everyone. So the DPS Quarterly Rent Index also revealed that the Southwest rents drew level, as I said, for the first time. Now, they rose by 2.3%. In the last quarter of Q4, and that's down here. And it was actually a total rise of 6.9% throughout 2021. So big increases over the last 12 months. But again, we're not surprised by that. But it's just something that is always interesting to keep your finger on the pulse as such and be aware of, James. So it's no surprises for you there either, surely.
Yeah, I think there's definitely positivity around, landlords. If rents are going up, it just means that they're going to be getting more, money in through the door. And I understand, demand is massive. But on the flip side of that, being the Cornwall Property Podcast, we're obviously gearing things towards Cornwall. In addition to what you said about the rental going up and what the average sort of Cornishman or what people can earn down here, it's also that extra flux for people who are now trying for a year to move down here to see what it's like before they make the actual commitment. The biggest weapon and threat they've got to the Cornish market, in my eyes, is that they're willing to pay 6 months or 12 months rent up front. And I just know, I'm not saying Cornwall is a very poor county, but it's in fact, for any county, it's quite unrealistic that people can pay 12 months rent. Let's call it, £1,000. Who's got £12,000 going around to pay up front? And people from up country are offering to pay that, and of course they're going to win. So again, I just worry for the Cornwall housing market, but we shall see. But on the flip side of that, I've also seen some landlords that are saying that we only want to rent to locals, which I think is really nice as well, and quite positive to give the locals a chance. But interesting times.
Very much so, very much so. So this is going to bring us on to the second article. And again, for those of you that aren't familiar, if you go onto the show notes on whatever podcast device that you're using or service that you're using, on the notes you'll find links to the articles that James and I are referring to. They're news articles that are out there now, links that you can actually have a look into it in a little bit more depth if you wish to do so. So the second article that caught my eye, James, was how Cornwall has three of the highest coastal town house prices in the UK. So obviously, as we know, there's been a big increase in price in the last year over the 2021 period. So out of those price increases, out of the top 10, 3 are in Cornwall. And, well, it's changed a bit. I know Newquay was very, very high up during the pandemic. Newquay has slightly dropped out that top 10, within that top 10 ranking, dropped size slightly. But the highest increase in the UK with regards to areas was Padstow, believe it or not. So this is from Rightmove data. So Rightmove have reported this information, and they've said that actually the highest average asking price in the UK in Padstow is looking around £658,000. So that is an increase of 20%. 20% increase. Again, it is your stereotypical holiday destination, isn't it? So
absolutely,
that's where we're looking. But Padstow is the highest average asking price increase over the last year. Second was Whitby, which is North Yorkshire. But in third place, we get another Cornish mention, which is St Ives. So the third highest average asking price increase last year was actually in St Ives, and that has gone up 15% to now the average asking price being £473,000 for a property in St Ives. So the other third mention for Cornwall is in sixth place. The sixth highest was Newquay. So the average asking price for properties in Newquay is £317,000, which again is a 13% increase year on year. So some big jumps, man, a 20% price increase That is bonkers. Obviously, these are referring to asking prices. You can put something for sale at a price, it doesn't mean someone's going to pay it. But the problem we're finding is the reason people are putting these prices on there is because people are prepared to pay it at the minute, or at least were before Christmas. So, yeah, some interesting stats. Our friends on the other border in Devon finally sneak in at number 9 and 10. So we've got Brixham, who snuck in at number 9 with a 12% increase year on year. They are looking at £299,000. A property on average asking price wise, and then you've got Paynton, who crept in at number 10 with a 12% increase as well. So some interesting figures, but if you imagine if you had a property in Padstow, you're looking at, they're saying 20% increase in your investment there. St Ives 15%, Newquay 13%. Some mad numbers, absolutely bonkers numbers. And again, this time last year in January 2021, people were predicting, a lot of the big valuers and commercial agents and things like that, they're all predicting a drop in prices last year, and how wrong could they have been? It's a big difference. It's going to be a
very... I want to kind of wait and see until the figures come out, because, again, just from speaking to people that I know have moved down, Padstow to me is an amazing place. I've spent many a time there with the family, having lived down here. It is really picturesque, but it's not the type of place that I think many people would buy to live, because it is just manic in the summer. Everybody knows you just don't go to Padstow as a local, because it's just you can't move or breathe in there, let alone at times of, when we're in the middle of a pandemic. But I just wonder whether that's quite interesting, whether, are people investing in Padstow? Because I know you get some very, very high returns on the holiday let market, and people buying there to then, let them out, because, I just can't really see it as a place where people are wanting to kind of live. But saying that, it's contradictory, isn't it, on St Ives, because you can't actually have any more holiday lets there, because they've got the clause in, you can't. People are wanting to move to a really busy tourist destination, but I think we need to wait a bit longer to see the stats, to see what the purpose of those purchases were. But Padstow at that price is just, it's nearing on £750,000. It's mad.
Completely agree. And again, it's only a certain type of person that's going to be able to afford a property. We'll say the average is, what did I say then? It was £658,000 as the average asking price in Padstow. So there's not many people that are going to actually be able to afford that as a second home, as you say.
Absolutely. It's high prices.
Very much so. But yeah, brilliant. Well, they're the two that caught my eye, James. And I know you've got two articles that caught your eye too. Let's go for it. What have we got?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're coming to some finance stuff, and as always, just please do seek professional advice when you're ever applying for finance. And talking about applying for finance, I know that often I really draw down on the figures about rates, and things don't tend to sort of move too much every 2 weeks kind of when we do this podcast. So I did find it's to do with finance, but I found two really interesting headlines, and I'd be interested to hear your opinion on them as well, Dan, and our listeners. But headline one was a record number of buy-to-let firms established in 2021. So historic ways where people were just buying in their personal name, but there has been a huge increase in people buying through, limited companies. And I'll come on to in a moment why that is, a tax benefit, as we've discussed in previous podcasts. But some facts we've got here: a record 47,400 UK buy-to-let firms were established last year, and that's a 14% jump. As opposed to 2020, and that's according to the data from Hamptons. The estate agent says half of all new buy-to-let mortgages were taken out by a company, meaning that firms now account for 29% of the outstanding buy-to-let mortgages, which is absolutely, such a big, share of the market. It also points out that last year's incorporations are almost twice the number that was set up in 2017, when it was announced that investors with properties in their personal names would no longer be able to claim the mortgage interest as an expense. And that is the big denominator of why people are doing this. So apologies for people who've heard it in our other podcasts, but just to recap on that. So historically, you would buy, your buy-to-let property in your personal name. And let's give a scenario here. Let's say Mrs. Jones was getting £1,000 rent for her property in Cornwall, and the mortgage was £500. Well, nice and clean and tidy, you would simply deduct that £500 for the mortgage as an overhead, and then you would only pay your 20% tax on the £500 profit that you've made. But the government brought in, starting in 2017, in four-stage increments, that by the end of 2021, you would only be able to get 20% relief of the mortgage interest. Now, many buy-to-let investors, as we've talked about previously, as you know, Dan, they're always on interest only, just to keep those mortgage payments down so they can maximise their passive income. So it got people thinking, and their margins are going to be a lot better. So why not buy in a limited company? It's relatively easy to set up. You can do it overnight, online, and then it just operates like a normal business, and that people could get that full 100% relief of the mortgage interest, because when you're buying a limited company, it's just seen as, it's just a business overhead. So it's not surprising that jump is there. And I think this is a way forward for a lot of people, and potentially our listeners, but it is a tax-efficient way to be purchasing property if you're doing it for the long term. What's your thoughts on that, Dan?
Yeah, and everyone, bang on it. And that's known as Section 24, I believe. Again, always seek professional advice, just double check all this. But yeah, I believe that clause there with the tax... offsetting the interest on the mortgage as an outgoing is actually known as Section 24, which is a big hindrance. So if you've got a landlord who's had property for years in their own name, and then all of a sudden this new clause has come out, Section 24 has come out, it makes a massive difference. Some properties that have been historically profitable could now all of a sudden overnight not be profiting for them. So that's why quite a lot of properties were actually seen to be put on the market not so long ago as well, when this clause came in, because people have reevaluated that. But yeah, 100%. People are getting switched on. Property is banging the media. Obviously, we're doing the property podcast. It is a very hot topic of conversation, and with regards to investment, it's a no-brainer at the minute, isn't it? If you've got the money sat there. Well, property, as we always rant on about, you cannot lose if you're in property for the long game, because it will always go up in value. There might be little peaks and troughs along the way, but as we referenced previously, there's generally an 18-year property cycle. So within those 18 years, it will double in profit, in value. So sit in for the long term. And if you are taking your investing seriously and you want to buy multiple properties, not just the one, then you'll find, I think, that, again, speak with your accountant and your tax advisor, but buying in a limited company is probably the way forward. If you're just doing it for one or two for a little pension, maybe it isn't. But again, everyone's circumstances are different. Always check with your finance advisor with regards to accounting and your tax advice in that respect. That's mainly the one you want to see there. So yeah, no surprises, James. It really isn't. But a lot of people are obviously doing their homework. They're educating themselves, and they're speaking to the right people, because they're finding out this is the best vehicle to purchase property in most instances, to avoid that relief, or to get that relief.
And that's it. And it is in most instances. There are a lot of ticks in the boxes for buying in buy-to-let companies. But just one thing that is, in my view, it's quite important, and it's what you're going to be paying on your mortgage, is that rates are significantly lower if you buy in the personal name. That is the main thing. Just to give you an idea, at the moment, if you're buying a buy-to-let property in your personal name, if you search hard enough, you'll be finding sort of 2.2% on buy-to-let rates, which is amazing. If you're buying in a limited company, the rates are higher, and you're looking at more like the 2.99%, if not creeping up to 3.5 or even 4% if you haven't got any personal income to declare there. But more ticks in the box for sure for buy-to-let. So something to think about that. As always, do seek that personal financial advisor to give you a steer in the right direction. So yeah, quite interesting though, I thought. And also, I think it's a really positive, and it makes me feel quite good about this next headline as well. It's first-time buyers rises towards the end of last year. So as we know, in the past year during the pandemic, there's been some pretty tough deposits in place, 15 to 20%. But now we're actually starting to see a lot of rates come down and the deposits. To give first-time buyers a chance. I mean, okay, buy-to-let, buying properties to invest in it is a nice thing to do, and you can certainly do it as a career. But at the end of the day, we all do need somewhere to live, and we don't want to be paying rent for the rest of our lives, and for the people in Cornwall, for that matter. So, just some stats again on here. Mortgage searches for first-time buyers grew by 8% on Legal and General Mortgage Club's Smart Tool criteria at the close of the year. The club has reported. Additionally, searches for equity release products grew 38% along the same time frame as well, which the Mortgage Club says is a sign that the bank of mum and dad is driving many first-time buyer transactions. So I think these two bits of information go hand in hand, really. So finally, we're seeing deposit schemes, come back as low as 5%, and that's not on Help to Buy, but there are places that you can actually get a 5% deposit, which is great. And I think a lot of people were thinking that first-time buyers it was only going to be a rush because the stamp duty was obviously relieved until the end of September. So people expected like first-time buyers to then drop, but it's actually still been climbing. But I know, as that news point says, there's been a huge increase in equity release from mum and dad because the borrowing rates are also very, very low. So mum and dad are sort of thinking, do you know what, let's help little Johnny or little Sarah to get on the ladder and release some equity to make us have that deposit going forward. So I think that's really, really positive. In addition to that, Legal and General Mortgages Club also said of head broker propositions Claire Beedman's comments where it's promising to see first-time buyers continue to support demand in a vibrant housing market that, contrary to popular belief, has remained buoyant in spite of the expiry of the stamp duty. And a lot of lenders are saying this, so that it's good to see that there are more first-time buyers coming forward, regardless, not just having the motivation that they don't have to pay the stamp duty because it's all back to normal now. And I just think for me, I don't know how you feel, Dan, it's just positive to know not just the investors are winning at the moment with low rates. It is also coming back to the people, where we all start buying our home for the first time.
And it's the hardest jump normally, isn't it? Just getting that first step on that ladder, which is always the hardest jump. But again, if you think of it naturally, you've been sat there, we've just referred to the price increases in the property market last year. Well, if you're just going to see 10%, 15%, well, 15% in some areas, but generally if you're looking about 7 to 10% on average of a price increase on your own property, then you've just gained equity on your own property. So if you can release that equity and then pass it on to you as a loan or a gift to your relatives or your son, your daughters, etc., help them get that foot on the ladder, then why wouldn't you? Of course you try your best to do that. So yeah, no surprises there once again, and it's all stimulating, and it's as you say, really, really positive to get these people who are wanting their first home, get the foot on the ladder. They are doing it, which is brilliant.
I really look to sort of watch this over the next few months just to see that climb is still going to be coming. And as we spoke in the last podcast, we've had the rise in interest rates, and I'm not so sure you're going to see one anytime soon. And if we don't, then hopefully we can still see these first-time buyers coming in to take advantage of the low rates for servicing these first-time buyer mortgages. It's great.
Definitely so. Right, so let's move on to the next segment of this show, which is going to be us and our picks of the week, essentially. So those that aren't familiar, I have selected a commercial property that is empty or is not you can't live there currently, uninhabitable currently, should I say. That's where I'm going for that. And James has picked a residential property. So the aim is, as we know, there's a Cornwall housing crisis. There are properties that are empty, unencumbered, unsafe to be lived in, and there are a lot of people needing homes. So we're just trying to give you ideas, some inspiration on how you can help to maybe make yourself a little bit of money, but also bridge this gap with the housing crisis. So if I go on first, James, I'm going to pick my commercial property. If you're watching on the video podcast, you can obviously see this as well as we fly through the actual listing on Rightmove. But those that aren't familiar, I will talk you through it. And if you can't see what I'm doing, there is a link in the show notes, or as always, to the Rightmove link, and you can actually see it on your own time. So the one I've picked out it's actually a plot of land. It's a plot of land in Launceston, and it's the one that really caught my eye with regards to one of the design that has already put in place. Obviously, it's not set in stone, but this is land. It's more the price, really. Offers in the region of 140,000, and it's a plot for sale for 2 detached houses with garages below. So they're kind of like townhouses, but the garages are undercroft garages with accommodation above. But again, detailed planning approval is already agreed and is in place. So it's a case of, look, get in hold and you could potentially get started on this. It's looking good. But if you go for the images, you can see the designs, which look good. You can see the plot, and it's just, I thought, entry level wise, it seemed like an attractive figure, 140,000. Now, if you can add yourself 2 properties on there, again, that's just an extra couple of properties brought to the market, and there's an opportunity there to make yourself some money too, which is a win-win-win as far as I can see. What are your thoughts on that one, James?
Yeah, again, me, Dan, I like plots of land when you can create new houses from scratch, and that is the Cornwall Council's manifesto to create more housing. That's why we're here to help. Essentially, and I think it's also a good time to buy. I know it's not going to be probably the cheapest time, as we've identified, because the market has been increasing, but I don't think it's going to go down anytime soon. So I think you would not only be adding value by creating units there, but the market's going in a decent direction. It's not going to go in a negative. I think the risk is relatively low for adding the value there, which is really good. And also the time of year. Let's say you made the offer today. We're here in January. You'd probably get it by February, March time. It's a good time to start building in the spring. You're not going into the bleak midwinter. So yeah, overall, I think it's a really good investment.
Definitely. Which brings us on to your investment opportunity, which is a current residential property. So James, over to you.
Yeah, another one that's in St Austell. Apologies over the last few weeks. It has always been in St Austell, but these are the ones where I'm seeming to find some good properties where you can add the value. So I promise I'll make on the next one. It's in a different location, but this one still looks pretty juicy to me. So it's a 2-bed cottage in St Austell, as I say. It's got a guide price there of 150,000. And these are the headlines that I like to kind of see. Well, I don't like to see, but I know that we can, hit our targets of helping the empty houses. So it's a cottage that has been empty now for over a year. In this time where people are desperate to find houses, this one's just been sat there twiddling its thumbs. So it's an opportunity here where you can create off-road parking. It benefits from gas central heating, which is already there in the property. And it's also got a rear garden as well. So it's reeking of a typical family home that can be brought back to the market here. And looking at some of the comparables on the street, there's definitely room to add value. So quite a nice investment. And you can see from the pictures here, it's a renovation, but it's not too top heavy. Nothing structural. I think a little bit of plastering to do, new kitchen, new bathroom, a bit of plastering, but nothing too brutal. And I think it would not be too much of a challenge. And I think you'd probably be able to do this within 3-4 months if you had the right team on board. And hey, let's bring another family property back to the market.
For sure. And again, just me just looking at the satellite aerial view. I've not been to the property, I've not viewed it at all, but just a little idea of, it looks like a long, big garden if you can see the images with the rear of the property. And look on the satellite view, it looks like neighbouring properties have built extensions out the back and potentially 2-storey as well. So you could add some real value here. Currently a 2-bed, you could make this a 3-bed with an extended kitchen, living room at the back. It could be a great family home there. So yeah, really like it. Have a little look. That one is on with, who's that one on with? That one's on with Millicent, and the commercial that I picked is on with CLP Kitchener. So those are our picks of the week. So guys, that is it for today's show. I hope you've enjoyed it. By all means, James, how can people get in touch with us?
Yes, they can get in touch with us on the website, which is the cornwallpropertypodcast.com. If you scroll down to the bottom, there's a message section there. And you can also get us on the social media. Facebook's a good one. Literally go on there and just press send message, and Dan or I will pick those up and make responses. But, as I always say, no question is too big or too small. Just ask us whatever you like, and we'll do our very utmost to answer them in the best way that we can. And it's great that you do reach out to us. It's what makes the show possible.
Definitely so. So guys, please, hope you've enjoyed it. Give us a little like, give us a subscribe, and keep in touch. And look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much for your time. Cheers.